All right, everybody. Welcome. Welcome back to the channel. This is the Late Show with your host, Young Brando, and I have my friend Ali Raza here. We are going to talk about the upcoming Only Watch auction, which is a charity event traditionally held in Geneva and for some time has been conducted by Christie's. It is a biannual event since 2005, and it is celebrating its 10th anniversary in the upcoming November. So there are many interesting watches that even commemorate that occasion. Um, Overall, you guys know that I cover auctions very thoroughly, even when I don't necessarily um, vouch 100% for a particular auction house or any of the watches they present. But if there is a singular event or a handful of events that I can fully vouch for, it's this kind of occasion where people actually come together for charity and at the same time also have this antagonistic spirit, this will to flex their horological muscles or um, aesthetic panache. And ultimately, of course, there are financial stakes behind it. We are no fools. We know that this is an industry, but I think the general sense of the occasion that surrounds an events like this clearly justifies it. But Ali, tell me a little more as I pull it up. Was there anything that caught your fancy at first sight, or did you see a watch that you considered absolutely ridiculous?
I did think like
Tell
I
me
think
more.
Hublot had a watch that I thought was ridiculous. And there were a lot of kind of psychedelic watches, the Gronfeld, right? The Jacquardot that I thought were kind of ridiculous. But then there were a lot of watches which, even though they were like ridiculous, like the Louis Vuitton Einstein watch, are awesome. Like they integrated his hair into the case. I was not thrilled to see more necklaces. I'm not gonna like that trend. Um, I'm not gonna like that trend myself. Uh, And then there were some, pretty nominal entries that I expect to see in the market, like the Blancpain entry. I expect to see that in the market. I would like to see the Baltic entry in the market, right?
Ooh,
Um,
yeah.
and then some of them, caught my eye as a maker for the first time. Like I known of Anderson Genève for a long time, but I don't think I've ever given them two glances until I saw their watch here, right? Then old friends like Reservoir. I was interested that Reservoir finally did something a little bit different than they've been doing. Um, and the singer collaboration. I think that was with Genus. I thought that was cool. So there's a lot of good stuff. I'm actually somewhat impressed with some of the watches.
So let's start with the good news because, you know, it, a lot of times some of these are not so adventurous at all, and they essentially are a dial color change away from a regular production model. Others are extremely ambitious to the point that they will never be realized in serial production, but the effort can be amortized because all the high rollers come to this event and really bid exorbitant amounts for these watches. And some pieces, like you implied, Ali, fall right in the middle where you can realistically see them as part of a regular production, at least down the line, if not necessarily immediately. I think the Baltic that you mentioned, that we talked about a little bit, that I talked about a little bit last night, is one such model. That's Lot 7. It is what they call Première Quintième Perpétuelle, so Premier Perpetual Calendar. And it essentially announces their advanced division, which they call Baltic Experiment or Baltic Experiments. So they are going to add in addition to, the time-only watches, they have like MR 01, like the bicompacts for the chronograph and the tricompacts they introduced. They are essentially, at least eventually, going to have more complicated pieces with higher grade movements as part of their line. And that's what they were saying in the description as well, which I shared last night.
This one impressed me. When we were talking about JJ's earlier, I briefly, I mean, it's a voucher, I think 5401 base, right? And
Yes.
they developed a module for it to make it a perpetual, and it's still under 10 mil thick. So they did some work on this, right? And I don't think about that when I think of Baltic. So I was genuinely impressed. Aside from the aesthetics, I'm a big fan of purples and aubergine.
To that's a great point. I'm not trying to take away from their achievement, but as a rule of thumb, integrated movements matter quite a bit when it comes to chronographs. So a movement that is designed from scratch essentially has a higher probability of being more compact and just in general more well thought out. But again, as a rule of thumb, most perpetual calendars are built on the base of high performance, more recently self-winding movements, and the module is set usually on the dial side of the watch. So a lot of times, for example, when you look at perpetual calendar chronographs, they would be built on the chronograph base, and through the exhibition case spec, you will essentially not see anything but, say, the Lemania CH27, right? So I'm not taking away from this achievement, but that is a pretty average practice of taking a movement like Patek takes their micro rotor 240 and build a perpetual calendar module on top of it, which they might do in-house or outsource to somewhere like Dubois de Prat, right? Some of those movement and module manufacturers.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, I understand that that's how it's done, and many companies do it, including some companies that I really like. But the 10 mil to me is actually what kind of got me. And you would know this better than I do, but I don't expect that from a Baltic. I expect that from much higher horology to make it that, 37 mil and 10 mil, to make it that compact. I was genuinely that impressed me. Maybe it shouldn't. I mean, maybe part of what you're inferring is it shouldn't impress me. This is just the way it's done.
No,
But it did legitimately impress me.
Because look, we are in a very crowded market, and smaller brands that don't necessarily have established heritage nor the proper name of a heavyweight independent watchmaker need to find ways of making a difference. And this particular watch, I think, both from the design standpoint and from the standpoint of its dimensions, I think makes that difference. It's a classic it's a classic complication. It's a prestige complication, but it's delivered in this, beautiful modernist case in an interesting color that you don't see every day. I mean, purple dials are not, not extremely common. Also not unseen, but like a two-tone purple dial with some texture on it, and kind of a suggestive integrated bracelet look that doesn't simply borrow on the established theme of a Janta 70s design. So there's a lot to be appreciated, and the fact that they used a Vaucher micro rotor movement, they certainly thought that, hey, we will build this as something that is going to be thin. That's something going to be something that's going to be compact. They wanted to make a difference. And as they mentioned in the very first sentence, for our second participation to Only Watch, we are delighted to introduce a new fine watchmaking line named Baltic Experiments with this unique Premier Cancien Perpetuel. So it's very intentional, it's very exciting, and it's very admirable. And I look forward to seeing something like this in their line soon, and I'm sure it's going to be a value proposition.
It is exciting, isn't it? Which I really wouldn't have thought. Like you said, Baltic and exciting, I would not think that, but it kind of is.
Well, the excitement I got from Baltic so far was, and that's why I'm excited about this watch even more, was in line of, they got good vintage inspiration and, can churn out a very handsome looking uh, dress watch with oversized Breguet numerals. Beautiful. Uh, they can, at a slightly higher price point, they can produce clearly a nice two register or three register chronograph. Again, heavily vintage inspired. Great. But this looks so different from everything else they have in the lineup, from everything else they have done, and also seems to fill a certain gap. I mean, this kind of product we see from like Havring 2, right? They have their perpetual calendar chronograph that is now in the compact 38.5. That's kind of a competing category, even though that is a more Teutonic and kind of a heftier, weightier watch, and of course a little more expensive, more in mid 20s than something like this, which I believe if they reduce it um, to the normal line, probably would list somewhere around $15,000 to $20,000, I'm assuming, and it can be a real value proposition.
Yeah, I mean, I would say even at 20, it's not a bad value proposition. But they're going to have a hard time moving it because of the branding at 20.
Mm-hmm. I don't deny that, but stranger things have happened, and some brands have achieved, again, more against even higher odds. I have to also say that I have mentioned sometimes, hey, Code 1159 could be a decent watch if it were half the price and was offered by some other brand rather than Audemars Piguet, in which case it starts looking tacky, uninspired, and just a mishmash of a bundle of different influences, which to me is unbecoming of the leading big boy out of the valley, right? So for me, that was very disappointing. But here, for example, you have a similar aesthetic, right? In a sense that you have a mid case out of a different material, wrapped in a sandwich of stainless steel with an exciting and dial color, and with a application that you don't see this kind of level, this kind of brand at all. And again, clearly they're distinguishing this line, so it's not going to be 1.5. It's not going to be 3K. It's not going to be 5K. Hopefully, like you said, Ali, it will be around 15K, so more people can benefit and experience something like this. Have a perpetual calendar because it's a very capable one. One technicality they note there is that the date change is quite close to instantaneous. It says, where is it? It says moving date functions is basically programmed like a sonnerie system, like a chiming watch, the date will change from the 28th, 29th, 30th to the 1st of the following month in around 1 to 4 seconds. That's pretty good. Um,
That's quite good.
yeah. So,
I mean, and I should note that, like,
of course,
I I obviously I buy off the beaten path brands, Carl Suhi, of which you also had Mr. Punkenhofer on your show as a guest. Like, so I'm not opposed to buying labels that traditionally I wouldn't associate with a value. So I do hope that they bring this to market, and it seems likely, as you said, that they're heading in some similar direction. They bring this to market because it is very attainable. And I would wager it's probably, uh, uh, more serviceable than higher end counterparts. So I'm happy to see it. I hope this does well. I mean, I hope obviously it's also a charity, so I hope it sells very well. But I hope when they bring this or a equivalent to the market, it does well.
yeah, I can certainly see it. I mean, I kind of like even aesthetically, I kind of like what they did with the case. But I would love to see if it will make it more accessible at the price point. I would love to see something like this with a more plain dial, all in stainless steel, and on a simple leather strap. If they can give something like this at 12 to 15, I think it would be a great hit for them. Once again, because it is something new, something modern, but something that has the proportions of a classic perpetual calendar, which a lot of the big boys are moving away from. Right, Patek and AP are making things bigger these days, so this could be very exciting. This particular lot is lot number 7 and has a pre-auction estimate of 20 to 30,000 Swiss francs. I think that's actually pretty realistic for one-of-a-kind version of something like this. And I'm not doubting that it would probably sell even for more than that, but I think that's a good sign for the future of the brand.
Yeah, well done, Baltic, and I wish you the best of luck with it. Well done.
So now let's move within that line. Let's sustain that line of thought a little more, because we have yet another independent brand, yet another perpetual calendar, a perpetual calendar that's even more capable, um, from a brand that our friend Swiss especially really likes. And he owns a watch by them as well. Their three-hander. Full Marie for the only watch, as lot number 24, presents a secular perpetual calendar. Do you know what that is, Ali?
No, I do not.
Okay. First of all, they're not making a theological point.
I was guessing it was closer to like sectional than theological, but
So no one needs to get offended or necessarily get excited. You might be actually kind of a humanist or a secularist or something. You're more than welcome. A secular perpetual calendar means precisely this. So when they advertise perpetual calendars, they always say that, hey, once you keep this running, you won't have to adjust it again until the next century. Um, that's that has a number of reasons. For example, for the IWC Da Vinci Perpetual Calendar, which has a four-digit four-digit year display, you also have to change some of the wheels. But more importantly, there are non-leap years like 2400, 2200, so on and so forth. A secular perpetual calendar actually can account for non-leap years, right? Because the usual sequence is 1, 2, 3 leap. But there are years like 2100, right? Like the next century, like the turn of the next century, that don't abide by that. A secular perpetual calendar can actually accommodate that too. So you have something like this, actually, there's a chance that if it keeps running, if it keeps ticking,
You get 300-400 years out of it.
your grandson or your great granddaughter might be able to use it. Of course, that's just an hypothetical. A mechanical watch would need some sort of service, some sort of caretaking in the meantime, but the idea and the technical achievement that goes with it still remains impressive.
I'm not going to lie. I like the sound of that. That's just one of those utterly useless things that I would care less about, but I'm genuinely impressed with it.
Yeah, and to be honest, again, it's you know, we when you're interested in mechanical watches, essentially we have a lot of complications that are either completely obsolete, mostly unnecessary, or complications and functions whose functions have been taken over by much more capable electronic devices, right? We don't use a dive watch anymore to time, our scuba tank or the time of our decompression. We don't really use chronographs anymore, or wrist watch chronographs, let's put it this way, to time laps on a racing track, so on and so forth. We don't necessarily need a moon phase, even though some of us may have, annual rhythms that abide by different versions of the lunar calendar. But all of these functions still don't cease to fascinate us when we see it in wristwatch form. And like you implied, Ali, earlier, in miniaturized form, right? Especially
Yeah.
when it can be shrunk to a certain size. You are just impressed by the mechanism, by the engineering, and by the imagination that brought it into being.
Yeah, and that's for me, that's very important, even though I prefer larger watches. And I'm looking at watches that are 14 to 18 mil thick in some cases, right? I'm still much more impressed when I see I'll use AP's perpetuals, right? Hand wound perpetuals that are 9 mil, 10 mil, and these grand complications with minute repeaters that are 9 mil, 10 mil, like those are just incredibly impressive. And then when they're also then crammed into 37 or 39 millimeter cases, I can't wear them, that's fine, but they're even more impressive.
Yeah. And again, I think that speaks to some of our aesthetic appreciation, even of certain watches, right? We might not visualize them on our own wrist. We might not think that we would even own them one day, but they don't. They continue to fascinate us. Another interesting detail that I'm now noticing is that this watch too has a mesh bracelet, Milanese style, that goes with it. So once again, you have what is traditionally, um, prestige and formal kind of complication that is brought down to earth in a way by an independent brand. I appreciate it. The watch looks very exciting and sporty.
I will say, just for the record, that I immensely dislike mesh bracelets. The Baltic execution that we saw just a few minutes ago almost has a reptilian mesh, and I could do without that in both cases. But that's just me, and I have arm hair.
Me too. And to be brutally honest, it's not necessarily my style too, but I like seeing a mesh bracelet on a watch that's not a dive watch. That's all.
That I appreciate when you take that uh, stylistic approach. Like, I don't know, it's the same way I appreciate that, the people who can pull off blazers over a nice crisp t-shirt, right? I appreciate
I
that as
would
well.
never do that. Yeah, exactly, exactly. Some people look nice. Some people look.
Some people, exactly. Some people look nice. It's not something I could ever do. But if you can pull it off, like this watch, and they pulled it off, both of these watches look very nice.
And again, I appreciate the thought behind it, first of all, in the sense that they are clearly trying to give another look, implement another aesthetic for this particular genre. They are not just making a perpetual calendar to have made it. That's actually one thing that I consistently think about, and I just want to state it very quickly now. That's the advantage of brands that don't have a legacy, that don't have a long history. When they want to introduce a new watch, when they want to make a certain complication, they haven't tackled it before. They haven't made a watch. They haven't made a watch like that before, so they don't actually have to deal with the weight of that legacy. They can start from scratch, and sometimes that can be refreshing. Sometimes that can be actually an advantage, because we talk about these upstart brands usually having a certain disadvantage over established brands.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to this, they actually have an advantage, because Patek is expected to make a perpetual calendar in the way they have always done, a perpetual calendar chronograph in the way they have always done. Otherwise, not that anyone cares about my opinion, but curmudgeons like me get pissed off, right? Fulamari has no obligation like that. They can, of course, they use computer-aided design these days, but I was going to say they can just take a blank sheet of paper and start sketching their idea, and that's it. So,
I don't know. I wonder if I would react that way if AP went off the beaten path on their perpetuals, like on the perpetual Royal Oak. I think you're right. I think I would be like, "Why'd you do that?" So, all right, fair enough. Continue though. Sorry, I had to think about that for a second.
Well, again, not that I was ever in competition, or not that I was ever allocated one, but I was somehow disappointed when the usual size for perpetual calendar became 41 millimeter, for example, in the Royal Oak for AP, right? And I'm sure there were some people who felt like that as well. But there is, the slightest thing can matter, whereas these people start from a blank sheet.
I will say, and even as an AP, I've said many times, AP is my favorite mark. Just overall, they just are. But there's always part of me that is sad that I can never have, what I would call the true AP Royal Oak, right? I can never have a jumbo or a jumbo form factor. They just don't fit me.
Too small.
Too small, yeah, and that makes me sad. So I do think about that sometimes. I'm very happy, and in my case, I'm very happy they make 41 and 42 mil Royal Oaks, but I can never own, the original, the OG.
Yeah, well, neither can I, for other reasons, but that's a sad story. So let's not open.
Well, so no, let's talk about this. So as your uninvited, unofficial, totally off the record business manager, as young Brando indicated earlier, that he can't, he won't vouch for things. He can't be bought. I would say if somebody wanted to try to buy him at 6 figures, he may consider it. So if anybody's got 6 figures in US dollars or euros, and they want him to vouch for them, he may consider it.
By which what?
No, earlier at the beginning of the stream, you said I won't vouch for the auction houses.
Yeah.
And I was laughing. I'm thinking, I don't know. I think if somebody threw 6 figures at him, he might vouch for an auction house. If they threw enough money, there might be some vouching going on.
Well, I mean, if I'm allowed to also shit on them once every so often when I'm not happy about something they do, by all means. But money, that's the thing. When thankfully at this point in my life, I'm not really hurt for it. I'm not desperate. So that's why I can say that. If I need, God forbid it can happen. If I need money, of course I might have different standards. But the point is, money always comes with strings attached, right? So sometimes it's better to look somewhere else where you can build something of your own, that's autonomous, that's independent, that's not beholden to anyone but the audience that you built and that you feel responsible towards. And
Yeah, no,
essentially,
we philosophically agree on that point.
that's
I
not.
just was making a humorous
But
side
yeah,
observation.
look, when it comes to cheaper ways of buying me, you are nice to me. You are my friend. I can count on you on a couple of things when I actually need you. Then you have essentially bought me. I would do anything for you, and I'm saying universal you, not only you. So
Definitely not Ali. He's definitely not talking about me. He's talking about you
there,
guys.
there are easier ways of buying me, much cheaper ways of buying me than paying me money. So there's that. I'm a human being after all. I actually like interacting with other people and establishing authentic relationships with them, and that to me is much more valuable than any figures of check. But then again, if AP gives me a Royal Oak Jumbo, uh, I might forget all my troubles that I had with their boutiques over the last 5, 6 years or so.
Yeah, no kidding, man. They
That's
owe a
other.
lot of people jumbos for the way they treat people in some of the boutiques. Oh,
I mean, and also for me, I if it were just the Beverly Hills boutique, I would have brushed it off. I'm talking about my personal experience. If it were just the Paris boutique, I would have brushed it off. If it were just the South Coast Plaza boutique, I would have brushed it off. I would have said it's this or that person, it's this or that business partner they have, or I would have said, it's me. I did something. I behaved a certain way, or I came across a particular way, and they didn't want to allocate anything. I would understand all of that. But the fact that I experienced this in 3 different boutiques, wasn't even allowed to step into some others without taking appointments well in advance. And the fact that I hear the duplicates of this story globally, I think I have made up my mind. I don't think it's a coincidence. I think you are more of an exception than the rule, and I'm glad for that. Hopefully,
oh no. And I've
hopefully,
also been
don't
like,
do anything to disturb that because it is unique.
yeah. I have said, and I've said it on air. As a 3-time boutique customer, I'm sometimes treated shockingly poorly for very, very simple things. Like, so it was I was very impressed. Actually, the first time I've been impressed, period, with the treatment I received was my last visit to the boutique in Ball Harbor. But
Mm.
I've had multiple boutique bad experiences, same things you just described. And in one case, I made an appointment. I flew in for it, and I could not be given more than a few minutes of time. It was a big rush show. Like I flew in for this. Like it cost good money and time to get here. Right. So no, I totally agree with you. I think it's a disgrace, and I don't know that it is the I don't know that there's an exception to the rule often. At least you got to buy a lot more than 3 APs. Yeah, I won't defend them needlessly either. I mean, like you, I'm comfortable in my life at this point. I don't feel the need that I have to defend somebody for the sake of access to their product.
Transition. Yeah, AP talk depresses me, Ali. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have gotten into it in the first place, but I do want to pay attention to this watch because it involves not only an exciting independent brand that is doing something different, that has focus, started with mecha quartz chronographs, moved on to that La Joux Perret G100 operated three-hander watch that they expanded into a line now in their catalog, and now they are collaborating with some of the very important watchmakers for this very impressive complication. This is their first participation at Only Watch, and they have teamed up with Dominique Renault, or Renault rather, and Julien Tichier, I'm assuming, to create an ultra-simplified modular secular perpetual calendar. The name Renault could be familiar to you because Dominique Renault is one of the co-founders of the High Complications Workshop, which basically everyone passed through at a certain point in time and is now integrated into Audemars Piguet, and that is Renault et Papy. So Dominique Renault carries in him the inventor's flame, as they put it here. He puts his ideas down on paper and then turns them into models. Wow, look at that. They actually did start on paper. The old-fashioned way, as he did in the days of Renault et Papy, with plexiglass and metal parts. Then it's the turn of Julien Tichier, who, in addition to co-inventing, translates the concepts and ideas into something the computer can understand so that all the parts work together and can be manufactured: the case, the components of the date module, the dial, but also the finishes and various treatments such as electroplating and titanium treatments. So for this particular module that they have grafted onto the perpetual calendar, they made possible an accuracy over the next 4 centuries, making up the secular years. Of these 4 centuries, 3 will not be leap years. So that's it. That's
well
a
done,
basic,
gentlemen. It's well done.
that's a basic description of the secular calendar as well. Here is a peek through the exhibition case back. And in this case, they don't necessarily make a claim that something like this will come into their line, but why not? I mean, it is possible. Maybe not a secular perpetual calendar, but soon enough, possibly a complicated watch as well that has a mechanical movement. The case is actually rhodium plated silver.
That was a little odd to me, by the way. That was a little odd to me.
Yeah, I think I don't know. Maybe they wanted something hefty. That's what I'm thinking.
I guess, maybe. It still strikes me as odd. It doesn't feel like it gels with the design philosophy that they laid out.
Hey, Mitch.
Gentlemen,
How are you doing?
shit. I think I've just been stood up. I thought Ozzy was going to jump on as well. This is
You
awkward.
might, unless I missed him, but he will. I'm sure he will come back. Yeah, the silver is having a kind of resurgence in terms of watch cases, actually. Although in a rather limited fashion, I have to admit. Of course, there is the Tudor entered the market with their gold, silver, bronze Black Bay 58s. And then more recently, Alpina made these Art Deco watches, just 28 pieces, of course, with high polished silver case. In this particular, I don't think I've ever come across rhodium plated silver in person, and I'm not sure if I'm entirely educated on how well that protects or preserves silver from the usual somewhat undesirable aspects of its tarnish.
So there's a number of jewelers that produce rhodium plated silver, right? They do the polish and then they rhodium plate it, and it provides a contrast to, especially the ones that do like silver black oxidation for signet rings, class rings, those type of things, right? It helps the contrast pop. So a number of jewelers do that. I don't know if I've come across it in watches. I'm going to take just a moment. So Aussie Expat,
hey, Oz.
Hello, Big Meech. Hello.
G'day,
I think
guys.
this might be the first time with Meech and Aussie Expat I've actually quote unquote met you guys. So hello.
Okay, you've been on
Yeah,
quite a
greetings.
bit, so you've been picking up the slack.
I don't think what I do is picking up anything. I think I might weigh him down like a lead fishing weight, but do you mind if I take a crack at Jack's question?
Yeah, of course. Jack says, do you think APs and specifically their dress watches are at the same level as Patek and Vacheron? Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah. So if we're saying dress watches, they don't have, I think, pure play dress watches at the moment, right? They have sports watches that can act as dress. But if I'm going to talk about, say, Royal Oaks in 36, 37, 39, 41 on leather straps, at the retail price points, I think the APs are even better finished than the Pateks, but not as well finished as the Vacherons at the same retail price points. That's my own hands-on experience. I will say the one thing I do not like about AP is that, especially the introduction of a line, and the 15500 for me was legendary for this. That first year's production, the quality control is way off. Like that, the first year production, the quality control is way off. Like you would look at a 15500 dial in that first year, the various colors, you'd throw it under a loop and you would see like material detritus that you just should never see. And I've never seen that with a Patek or Vacheron ever. Right. So talking about, the today watches at retail in production, in terms of their library, I've already professed to be an AP fanboy. In terms of their overall library, I think AP takes the cake. But today, they're a solid like third place of the so-called Trinity.
So let's put it. I'll take a stab at this question too, if I may, Adi. So currently, AP has two main lines of watches without dipping into Royal Oak concept and more, sometimes more horologically ambitious undertakings. They have the Royal Oak, which splits off to offshore as well, of course, and concept. And then they have Code 1159. They have discontinued practically everything else.
Yeah, including the jewels and whatnot. And I don't consider the Code a dress watch either, by the way. But
no, that's why I'm saying. So technically, Millenary, which was a dress watch genre, Jules Audemars, which is the kind of watch that you see on your screen today in terms of the case shape, and Edouard Piguet, for example, the line that is named after the other founder, which has a more rectangular Art Deco design. Those were true blue dress watches, and without even going all the way to vintage. So when we are talking about these neo-vintage examples, you can somehow brush off Millenary because that is a very odd design. I like it. but that sort of horizontal oval design was clearly not popular. In that neo-vintage category, I'm not going to make any strong statements, but I would put AP actually one notch above even of Patek and Vacheron at the same time period. When it comes to Jules Audemars as a case design, it is actually something that I truly adore. If there's a profile picture here, so it basically has, I just wrote a little ode to it in Instagram, so I will just read this. The softly rounded case, the slightly stepped bezel, and the subtly downturned lugs exude a strong vintage charm, even as the applied dial fixtures and the sober, nearly monochromatic look of the watch inject a tasteful modernity into the mix. The suggestive interplay between brushed and polished surfaces, which is a signature of Audemars Piguet, is carried throughout, and even on the dial, where the contrast is both striking and delightful between the vertical brushing of the center of the dial and the mirror polishing of its fixtures. This is a stainless steel chronograph, but I think a great example of a dress watch with the simple two-register look. It is also right under 39 millimeters, so the proportions of it are thoroughly conservative as well. I believe the thickness is right around 10 too, so which is not necessarily impressive, but also not, between 10 and 11, it's not bad for an automatic chronograph either. Incidentally, this is something that Wind Vintage currently has in the inventory, and it is in their signature style of unpolished, authentic presentation, and happens to have the box and papers as well. Just an example, I love this particular déployant buckle that was designed by Emmanuel Guet and has this kissing AP initials at closure. I think that's a beautiful design, and has this also kind of a stepped shape on the buckle that harkens back to the lines of the case as well. So overall, from a design perspective, from what beats inside, I would certainly put it at the same level. Vintage dress watches, same. If you are enchanted by display case backs and more adventurous case designs, you might want to. More adventurous case designs, you might want to go in the vintage and neo-vintage to Vacheron Constantin. If you want something that is even more classic, more restrained, and at times also as an exhibition case back, oftentimes you will end up going to Patek. But if you are self-assured, if you know what you're getting, and you're getting a stunning watch in either case, and still a relatively decent value, you'll be more than satisfied with AP.
I will say that the best finished AP watch I've handled myself was actually a millenary, a dual-time millenary. It was shockingly well finished. So pretty much all my other experience in that case has been the modern watches, very few of the vintage watches. I've handled many more vintage Pateks than the other two of the Trinity, but yeah, so I can't disagree with anything you said. You're more or less definitive as far as I'm concerned, at least on this space.
Well, I mean, I'm just opinionated, Ali, but I was just reading my own writing and thinking like, no, that's not too bad. Oz gives me a lot of hard time with my writing and says I sound like the AI, but I take that as actually high praise.
We'll start copy pasting young Brando's monologues into ChatGPT. You know, ChatGPT records the history, right? So you can check if people just ripped off papers, and ChatGPT will get confused itself. So I think I wrote this. I'm pretty sure I wrote this.
Jack, thank you for 99 Canadian cents. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think it's a funny thing that you have there with respect to, like, if the presentation is too clean, it lacks a sort of a texture, you know what I mean, an authenticity that robots have a little bit of a harder time to inject. So, I mean, it happens with branding as well. Like when I was selecting iced teas, I went for the one with like the cheap PET bottle and plain yellow label, just because it looked like it was made in someone's bathtub rather than the one that looked like it was owned by Coca-Cola. You know,
Well,
it could have still been owned by Coca-Cola, but
I definitely do that with certain types of products. Like I'm a big fan of beef jerky, right? I actually one of my I forget what it was when Google still did Google Plus or whatever it was. I listed myself as CEO of beef jerky on. And there's like an island apparently out there called like Beef Jerky Island or something, right? And I will definitely get beef jerky that looks like it was just packaged by a hillbilly next door to me over anything like, that looks like it was done by a current generation hippie. Can I make a request, young Brado, for the next watch to look at?
Oh, of course.
The
Ozzy was
Sylvain
asking a
Pinot.
question.
Oh, sorry, Ozzy, go ahead.
If we can just attend to that. What happened?
Okay.
Are they bundling something with the BB-54?
I think Meech and I at the moment have like imminent Tudor fever. Basically, I want a Ranger and he wants a Black Bay 54, and
Yeah,
we've got
they
no
offered me
reason to get
one.
it.
They offered me $300 off on the rubber strap.
But it comes with the steel strap, doesn't it? Or is it only rubber?
Nope. It's either or. I think you get a NATO. A NATO. I can't remember.
You're right. The rubber is.
I mean, the fact you got to see one, they have one to offer you down here. They haven't.
I've been offered the steel and the rubber twice, and initially they didn't want to offer me $300 off, but now my rep called me up. She said, "We're willing to fold a little bit, and we'll give you the discount if you show up tomorrow." So I don't know.
Oh, Tudor fever. I want a Ranger, and I think I'll try pull the trigger tomorrow. I've been thinking about that watch in my head since release, and it's never sort of. I've never had a reason to say no, that's off the list. It's just sort of no, it stayed, and it will never be more perfect, that particular watch. But anyway, on the 54, you should talk to Nebulite, but you're not going to get any relief with that advice because Nebulite, as far as I know, is on a plane to Alaska right now. So,
no, he didn't even keep his. Yeah, he had it for less than a day, didn't he?
Yeah, he got rid of it.
That's crazy.
Yeah. He flipped it. He flipped it.
Yeah, I don't know if I really want to take it because I've trash talked. I mean, not that that's anything new. I trash talk watches continuously, but I've shit on Tudor for like the last 2 weeks here. Now it's a bit of an oxymoron. So, by the way, this stuff tastes like shit, man. I bought a 6-pack of it. It tastes like shit.
The Modelo fruity flavors are as well as also.
I love the red apple that they came out with like a year ago, and then they discontinued that. It was like, I
you
figured.
should have gotten the message from Light Peach, Meech. I rate you higher than that. I think you're into heavier peaches.
Oh, Jesus Christ! I thought he said I raped you higher than that. I'm like, what the fuck? Jesus Christ!
I don't do anything without consent, Meech.
At least take me out to dinner, Lord. Jesus Christ. I figured it was 4th of July
white
weekend.
dial Royal Oak? That's the one that I want. That's the one that I need. God damn it.
He's
Oh,
lying to
the
himself.
15500, yeah.
Oh my god. I'm probably a little more preferential to the 15.4, 15.510. I'm not a super fan of the chapter ring, but you know, these are luxury problems. I'll take anything. I love the white dial. That's my favorite.
No,
So I had the 15400 in the silver dial as well.
Oh.
And I prefer the 15500 aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
So when it came, because I have the slate dial 15500, I have the silver dial 15500.
Mm-hmm.
I had those two. So when it came time, I had an opportunity. And the 15400 I had actually bought off the gray, and they offered me the 15500 from the AD. So my first AP was bought off the gray. That was my first AP.
Mm-hmm.
And like I didn't have a concept of what the gray market was like back then. Like I had no idea I was buying from the gray market. I really didn't. Like they just had all these luxury watches. I'm like, this must be official. They've got all the papers and stuff, right? So,
That's
and hopefully
interesting.
any day now I'll have a 15510 in the collection.
What are you going for?
I'd rather not say.
Fair enough.
Ice blue.
Um,
No comment.
yeah, it seems to make sense. Yeah. it seems to make sense.
JB 199. Bravo, Ali. Nice AP.
Yeah, I just love the look of the white dial. Like it just pops. I mean, I don't care what other people want, you know, it's
the 15500 blue dial I don't like actually, but the 15510 blue dial, it's a slightly darker blue. It plays with the light a little more. I really like it. I really like the 15510 blue. And they introduced that blue
it's
first,
very
not on the
dark.
15510.
It is
They
very
introduced
dark. I've looked closely at the 15510 blue. I've
Yeah.
only looked at the green and the blue. They're very dark on both.
Yeah, and I didn't realize it until later, but they introduced that blue on a Tourbillon model like a full year before they announced the 15510. I didn't even think about it, like where that blue came from, and I really like that darker blue on the 15510. So
When it comes to, by the way, Black Bay 54, sorry, I had to
yeah, go
Stretch.
full circle.
I don't have a very extended opinion on it. I know it caught people off the, off guard a little bit, but, Tudor has had a long tradition of making reduced size, junior submariners anyways through their existence, especially before their more recent revival and resurgence. But most obviously, of course, the first examples of the submariners, whether we are talking about Tudor or Rolex, were more closer to 37. So it's actually not out of order. I think there's a place in the lineup for that, and I think there's a place in the collection of people like us. I don't like excluding people except Ali. The three of us are afflicted by the same curse or endowed with the same blessing. We have
I don't know what you're talking about, Lord. I'm thick as shit over here, right?
we have slender wrists, and I think there's room for a smaller Submariner. If you like the dive watch, there's room for that style that is a little more restrained, a little more conservative. I actually
I like the white, the white on the bezel instead of the gilt. I do like that. I think, I don't know, just in general, when offered white on something instead of gilt, I'm preferring white. So as an example, the older Bluesy, I think, had gold writing, and I think the
Yes.
white just is really pops and is very crisp on the new one. So yeah, just in general, I like that touch of white. I would take it over a Black Bay 58, but I own a Black Bay 58, and it's not worth like swapping over for that reason alone. But
There's something. So I'm in the definitive minority. I don't like the Black Bay 58.
Mhm.
But the visually, I don't like it. Visually, it just doesn't appeal to me. But I like the 54 because the proportions work better at that size for me. I like the aesthetics of the 54, or I don't like the aesthetics of the 58. It's just the proportions of the bezel and the details and the case just work better visually for me.
Yeah. Yeah, the 54 is really interesting in that the lug to lug didn't really change much. So you end up with a package that's actually more straight, I think, up and down. And so, like, saying that it's a smaller, Black Bay, it sort of it's more like it's tightened up in a different way. So yeah, overall I just like the color scheme just a little bit better. I prefer the big crown over the smaller one, but I don't think it really matters.
Yeah, Meech, pull the trigger, man. It's a good watch.
Okay.
Well,
yeah,
the real
but I don't want
question
to
is
send the wrong
on-
message though to my dealer that I'm willing to like buy garbage again from them.
I think the big question is like the rubber versus the steel. I think it looks super smart on the rubber, but I think it's very, very difficult to ignore / not get the steel bracelet because it's also got the T-fit, I think. Although
I think they both have the T-fit.
the
don't
rubber's
they?
also got T-fit. Okay,
I could be wrong.
that's a tough one.
So two small points. Maldives. I love Maldives. $4.99 in pounds sterling. Keep it up. Thank you so much, Maldives, for your support. Appreciate you. And Jack was asking, what do you think for the overseas reduced for small wrists? So this is the moon phase, which is just um, slightly thinner, but has the same diameter as the full size. I think that looks actually just fine. If you're otherwise a bigger guy, I think the 41 should not intimidate you. I also had the opportunity, if you check through my shorts, pause, no other kind of suggestion, but YouTube shorts, you will see that I have posted a few videos with the new reduced on my wrist. That also doesn't look bad, but honestly, for the average male collector, I would not recommend it unless you plan the old switcheroo with your wife or significant other. So I think it's not, it's too small. It's too small for what you imagine that watch to be. It really ends up being like a piece of, um, oh no, it's not. I didn't post it in the shorts. Where is it? If it's not there, I guess it was on the Instagram. Let me see. Oh, I posted it as a picture to Twitter, of all things. That's just great. Apologies, but there we are. This is the pink gold version, for example. Doesn't look too bad in this close-up shot, but that's mostly an illusion. It looks quite small. It looks too dainty for what I imagine it to be. Um, Here it is in stainless steel. Yeah, unless you want, like, one overseas to change around, or maybe your significant other likes the 36 millimeter Rolex day dates and you want to offer them a more original gift or a different kind of direction. I think the pink gold version of this is absolutely stunning. But for the average male collector, even with small wrists, I would not go for this watch. It feels too small for what it's supposed to be.
Feels too small.
Lady size.
So Meech, I'm gonna vote no on getting the rubber. I just think that it just doesn't usually work out. Like in terms of, okay, you got a reduced price, but that bracelet is still worth too much, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm still shocked
you're
that
right.
VC charges more for links than AP does.
So are you gonna get that Ranger? Like, what are you gaining from your Ranger? Because I
I'm
know
not
you
getting
don't buy
into. So
garbage.
I had a deep and meaningful with the store manager today, and I asked, look, you've gotten me everything I could ever want. You know, you guys owe me nothing. You've just been incredible, and I'm now asking for ridiculous watches. You know, Platona or you know, the Le Mans. And I said, like, this is like completely next level. So I mean, you know, what has to happen here? You know, let me know, like, what has to happen to make sure that I'm in the running. And he goes, nothing. You just patience. I'm like, okay. I really wish the answer was buy the Ranger and then we'll make sure you got the Platona, but
Why not just
it
buy the
wasn't that.
Cartier?
I'm not feeling the Santos as much as I am the Ranger, for sure, 100%. I'm not feeling the Santos as much. Santos
Fair
is
enough.
cool. It'll happen. It's a little bit better of a, how do you say, it's more likely to turn a deal around, I think, if I need to. Like, there's no way that they'd be like, oh, give him the Platona because he's going to pick up a Ranger. Like, that's never gonna be. It's not significant enough. But I think the Santos at roughly more than double the price is probably the right watch to slide in on. And if that truly is what it comes down to, but I don't think it is. I think they're telling me to be patient because they just need the right customer for those kinds of watches, and for some reason, I'm in that profile of right customer, I think. So I guess I trust him when he says just be patient. I
I
don't
think
know.
if you really wanted to seal the deal, Ozzy, if you wanted that Platona tomorrow, right?
Well, no one's getting it tomorrow, but
No. Hear me out. If you wanted that tomorrow, all right, here's what you do. You walk into the dealer, you bend over and say, I would like to purchase a solid gold Black Bay 58. Full retail, no discounts. Guarantee you it's gonna get you that Platona. Just let them fuck you once and you know, the Platona is yours. You're home free.
That, by the
oh, what a
way,
wonderful watch.
the you would be interested in my Patreon for tomorrow. I've already recorded an entire episode on the ultimate Daniel Roth era Breguet collection, with one of which is the 3130. That's classique with the asymmetric dial, power reserve indicator, moon phase. The other one is the 3237, which is, of course, the hand wound, the Mania based chronograph, and then the perpetual calendar 3050. Of course, in that era, you have to settle either for yellow gold or white gold for that reference point. Maybe there are some rare examples of them in pink gold. I know there are platinum versions of some of those references that are extremely rare and carry insane premium. But you can pick up a 3130, which is an absolute Breguet classic, and something that Daniel Roth adopted from Abraham Louis Breguet's own watch designs, own pocket watch designs, and that in and of itself is an incredible watch. And wow, to say, you know, I know, Jack, you're a young man. If I saw that on a young collector's wrist, you know, you would ascend to heaven in my eyes. You know, it's an incredible kudos, I have to say. So I hope you get it sooner than later, even if that particular reference point doesn't please you. By the way, guys, the the memberships, were introduced earlier this week, and the guy to my whatever direction this is was generous enough to gift 15 memberships. 13 of them
Wow.
have already found their lucky winners. Make sure to allow gifts on this channel. I think there are 2 more of them floating around, if I'm not mistaken. But basically, everything I do on Patreon, when it's time, gets translated into these memberships at the entry level, which is actually, if I may say so myself, is great content.
I agree. I've said so before you ever said so on here.
And Angie says Breguet Classique or Lange One. Meech knows me. I'm a sucker for a good deal. So I would say Classique, because you can actually land some great examples for about 12 and a half, 13. Beautiful yellow gold.
Classique's also a little more elegant, period.
Yes, it is. But it is smaller technically, although it has an oversized presence because it has that perfect round case with extended and downturned lugs. So even though it's 36, it doesn't look dime size next to Lange One, which is 38.5 at the standard size. So the value proposition is higher with Breguet Classique, and I get your comparison, Ant. I think it's asymmetric dials, classic restrained designs. Breguet Classique with the moon phase is a more fun watch, whereas Lange One is a statelier watch. Breguet is classic, but it also has kind of a whimsical side thanks to the moon phase indicator. Lange is serious business.
Yeah, I think dollars to donuts, even if it was an equal value proposition, I think I would still prefer the Classique. Now, the Lange obviously comes in sizes. The Lange One comes in sizes that are made for me, right? But just the Classique is just a beautiful watch. It strikes me as very elegant. It's softer, right? It's a softer looking, more elegant watch.
For sure. I'm assuming more that a lot of my audience is more immediately familiar with the Lange One because I talk about it basically every day. But I do want to bring on, an interesting example of the Classique in white gold, just so you get an idea. I mean, this is an incredible piece. Yeah, look at that cute face. I always love an anthropomorphic, expression of the moon face. So I like this. Is it one of those instances again when I'm not showing the picture?
No.
It's cute. Can we get a close up on the face?
Yeah.
Oh, it looks mean. Looks a little sourpuss. I'd rather I prefer my moon faces with a sort of a shocked look, like.
Wait,
you don't like resting moon bitch face?
Say it again. Oh, okay. Ozzy, if I ever have any sort of influence over a watch brand, or if I ever end up making watches at some level and have a moon phase indicator, I'll freeze that frame and
shocked moon face. That's what.
That will be the Easter egg for us, like Ozzy moon phase for the one. But yeah, so that's the That's the Breguet Classique, which is a design that Daniel Roth adapted from Breguet's own pocket watches to something to be worn on the wrist. But on that note, let's make a soft return to this Follamari we were talking about, lot number 24. It is a secular perpetual calendar, which means that it is actually programmed to go for 4 centuries, basically, even accounting for non-leap years. Has this rhodium-plated silver case, and furthermore, blued titanium dial, which with an in-house anodic oxidation treatment, as they put it. There's a Maltese cross on the central month hand, sandblasted plates gilded with 18 karat yellow gold. That's the Maltese cross they're talking about. That's the sandblasted gilded plates, which you are given a look through that partially open worked spaces. I'm not sure what material this is, but I like that blue accent. I'm guessing maybe that's part of the dial. This piece right here.
It's an actual slide. It actually has some function.
Yeah.
Yeah, they ribbed it, right? So you could get a grip of it to slide it back and forth. So there's some function to it.
Let's see. Maybe it's for the dates or something. Maybe it's for the date correction. Let's see if it says something like that. A single corrector for the entire module. So I guess that's in fact that moves in a synchronized fashion everything. So you're absolutely right, Ali. All right, and they did build it on the G100. So La Jouperet, and on top of that, they built the module, which is only 1.25 millimeters thick. Overall, the watch is 39 millimeters in diameter and 11.3 millimeters thick, which is, once again, very impressive, especially for a self-winding movement with a full rotor and not a micro rotor. Apparently, the mesh bracelet itself is in rhodium-plated silver as well. Very interesting. And that is the watch, with the estimated value of 20,000 to 30,000 Swiss francs at lot number 24. Ali, earlier you were asking about the next watch. What were you interested in?
So either the Sylvan Panada or the Shaken, because the Constantine Shaken is wild.
Okay, let's start with everyone's favorite Russian watchmaker, lot number 33, Konstantin Shaken, Stargazer Omni watch, pièce unique. Actually, this is not one that I studied, so maybe you can kind of introduce us to this, Ali.
So it's one of like 3 or 4 watches, and only watch this year, which has functions on the back. And this one takes it, complications and functions on the back. This one takes it to the extreme, right? So the picture on the right there, right? If they have a description of everything, they have continuous moon phase, they have the disk moon phase, the solar activity cycle, 2 azimuth indicators. The tourbillon's obviously visible from the back, although tourbillon is not a complication. And they have a zodiac indicator on the front, right? They have an equation of time, right? A 24-hour indicator, length of day, length of night. Like they've gone.
Yeah, sunrise, sunset, and those are on the back. The zodiac indication I already hated, but
Oh, I
because I'm
hate
a
tons of
Scorpio.
the complications on this watch. It's the fact that they actually pulled it off within the same design aesthetic and did this. They actually did it. Now, oddly enough, of all things that isn't listed, the thickness isn't listed, right? So I don't know if it's like 2 centimeters thick, but this fascinates me because there's a couple watches that have a number, a number of watches on the market, and a couple of only watch have a couple of complications or something on the back, right? They went all in on this.
Well, let me put it like this. For example, the FP Jaune piece, Chronomètre Bleu Furtif,
Yeah,
that's,
with the moon phase on the back.
that is more aesthetic in a sense, right? Because in the sense that what they're trying to do with that watch is to have something where even the time is not visible to anyone but the wearer. So they're also on the case back. There's the power reserve indicator and moon phase indicator that's also only visible to the wearer. So it's kind of playing with the concept and not, like you said, something that is trying to put everything but the kitchen sink on a single watch, which I'm not, by the way, using it as a detriment, because Chaikin is a watchmaker that I deeply respect. But it's like you said, it's basically everything: equation of time, the sunrise, sunset, continuous moon phase, discrete moon phase. What else was there? Zodiac. Um, I mean, of course, I think it's a perpetual calendar to begin with, right?
Yes.
Is it?
No, it's perpetual.
I mean, and this is, what is this? Is this the seconds? Or no, that's the equation of time at the middle. Yeah, that's the equation of time. This is hours. This is minutes. And then what else? 24
No, you
hours.
know what? This one wasn't a perpetual. This wasn't the perpetual.
Mhm.
And I got mentally distracted because I remember, and I just realized which one it was. It was the Biver that has no indication of time on the front of it at all.
Mm.
But yeah, this shaken to me is wild. It is wild to me they did this.
And you see, it's actually a reversible design with these modular lugs, so it can be worn on either side. A double-sided reversible design and a pre-shaped reversible strap. It can be worn with the tourbillon open to admire it.
Yeah, this is crazy to me. This watch is nuts.
Retrograde day of the week, Zodiac, as you mentioned. I don't even know what sidereal time is, but there's that.
This doesn't look like I could play tennis with it.
No.
No, this doesn't. I don't know. This is wild to me. Like,
Yeah,
I've never liked a shaken. I've always respected shaken, no question about it. But I've never liked one. Right? They're the more whimsical pieces. This one I legitimately like because it's so wild. Right? I think that, by example, the Code Grand Comp. I think it's kind of an ugly watch, but it's so wild to me. I love it. So there's a certain point in which, I don't know, this just took it to that place where I wish I knew how thick it was, but
Yeah, look, I mean, when you go down, you can kind of see just the caliber from not exactly profile, but you can already tell how thick that is.
yeah,
So,
it's crazy. It's like it's gonna be 2 centimeters thick.
but I do wanna read very quickly at least some highlights from the description, because it will probably introduce us to this. So let's see. Multi-complication watch, reversible, can be worn on both sides. 16 complications all together. It does take that wrist mon, and specifically the Joker design. The functions include the tourbillon, which is essentially a regulating mechanism and not necessarily a complication, and 11 astronomical functions, symmetrical case shape with those swinging H-shaped lugs, which allow the reversibility, which allows you to wear the tourbillon side on the face of the watch. And we were talking about the discrete moon phase, sunrise and sunset azimuth indicators, length of the day, length of the night, continuous moon phase, retrograde day of the week. I'm probably forgetting something. Equation of time, of course, right at the center of the watch on Joker's nose, so to speak, the zodiac indicator, the 24-hour hand, so on and so forth. So it's
How is this not a perpetual? Some of these complications don't make sense if it's not a perpetual.
I mean, I can put it this way. Maybe he couldn't find a space on the dial, because it can be a continuous moon phase that will be precise for the next 122 years, which means it is programmed a certain way that is as precise as any perpetual calendar worthy of the name. On the other hand, it only shows the day of the week and not even the date, if I'm given to understand correctly. It shows zodiac, which means, I guess, technically it has the month as well, right?
So it's like an annual calendar hybrid. Not even. I don't know. That's just weird. I love it. Forget. It doesn't matter. I love it. Not that I could bid on it. I think it was like they said it was going to go for 150 to 200.
Yeah, and probably higher than that. But the lot 33 is an estimated value of 150 to 220. That's the Konstantin Chaikin Stargazer Pièce Unique for OmniWatch 2023. And next, you had said...
You can go to any other one. I had just mentioned the Sylvan Pinot as well. Very simple design. I just find it kind of striking.
Yeah, and this is, again, it's a beautiful watch, but this is one of those watches that basically exists in his line, but has been like ever so slightly and mostly aesthetically modified for this special entry. But tell me what you liked about it, Ali. Let's start with that.
So you still have the shaken up on screen, by the way.
Really beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, I got to jump. It was great catching up with you guys and really nice.
I'll leave if you stay.
No. What? Take care.
Take care, man. Because I'm the Ranger.
Thanks for dropping.
We'll see.
I mean, it's as you said, it's almost exactly the same as the existing, some of the existing offerings. The ice blue, offset with more of like a muted baby blue or robin egg blue. I just really like the aesthetics of it. It's just very clean. It's very pretty. I just like the way it looks, and I have zero hands-on with any Sylvan Pinot. I just like the way it looks. I mean, it's really that simple.
So
It's one of the few. It's one of the few watches I can see like the Blancpain that I would want to see on my wrist in real life. And it's 40 mil, so I could pull it off.
That's true. That's very true. So, just to give a little bit of a background on Sylvain Pinault, he is an independent watchmaker, if I'm not mistaken, of French origin, but works and is based out of Switzerland. He won in the last year's gala for the GPHG,
yeah.
the grand prize, the Academy Awards of the Swiss horological industry, the Revelation Prize, especially for this watch, Origine, or Origin. And essentially, the unique part of this version is the guilloche center dial and the ice blue hour track, as well as the subsidiary dial for the seconds. I believe he already makes Origine in stainless steel, but it is even more fitting here. Looks like a very exciting and interesting design. I love how beautifully polished and beveled that tourbillon bridge is.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine like that. You want an example of black polish? That's what it means. Sometimes, people usually say mirror polishing. Perfection of mirror polishing means that the surface is so smooth that from certain angles that it will not reflect any light whatsoever, which will give it this sort of black appearance. Hence, it's also called poly noir.
All right, so I have a question, and I think you must know why I'm going to ask this question. So, are you saying that, in your opinion, black polish and mirror polishing are two different finishes?
No, technically, it's from a technical standpoint, from the point of description, it's the same technique.
Okay, all right.
Although, not to judge or single out any particular finisher or any particular manufacturer, the results are not always the same.
Oh no, that's definitely true.
But no, it's the same technique.
Because that became an interesting topic on some other channels between two prominent characters for a while. I was kind of surprised.
Yeah, I didn't listen, but I can imagine at least one side of that argument, and that person usually just argues to argue and to feel better about his miserable self. I'm not even going to mention his name because he thinks people actually care about him. But that's don't. People have to stop taking that character seriously because he's desperate for it, and once you let that go, he will disappear into the nothingness that he came from. But yeah, it's the same thing. But there are degrees of perfection, of course, and this is a great example of it.
Just so pretty. This watch is just so pretty. That ice blue completely I don't like full ice blue dials. The fact that this is just a design element, because the guilloche in and of itself is not remarkable. Neither their hands, none of that's remarkable. When it's offset with that ice blue, it suddenly is remarkable.
Yeah, it's again, anywhere else it may have been simply hype, but in this particular case, it looks very refreshing because of everything else around it with which it contrasts. Of course, the I'm pretty sure, I will double check now from the description and beyond possibly, but the frosting of these plates are seemingly also done by hand. And I mean, look at even how these countersinks are polished. I mean, it's, the devil is in the details, as they say. So,
Yeah, that's delectable. That's delectable. Well done.
like, look at where the screws sit, where the rubies sit, and how well those countersinks are done.
So nice. Makes me feel very charitable.
What does that mean exactly?
One of these days, like, I'm gonna be bidding on Only Watch. It's gonna be ugly.
I mean, look, you might not be able to get this color, but I'm sure if you order something from Sylvain Pinot, you can probably make minor adjustments on some aspects of this watch, I'm sure, and the hour track and the second subsidiary dial are certainly prime suspects or prime placements for that. Now look at how deep that anglage is.
Son of a gun.
So
Sometimes I look at these watches and I wish I was classier. But then I walk out to my kitchen and there's beef jerky and I remember exactly who I am.
I think you can still keep a diet of beef jerky if you're wearing Sylvain Pinot. I don't think I wouldn't judge you for that. And 40, I think it's 40 and change the diameter of the watch. Yeah, no, exactly 40. At least that's what the specs say. 11 millimeters with the crystal. Yeah, I think you can certainly pull this off.
I think 40 for a dress piece I can pull off in general, but yeah, we'll see. I'm not bidding on this though. It's not happening.
So the hands are heat blued, and so is the balance bridge.
Yeah, watchmakers, I don't care what your price point is. Please stop DLC bluing hands. Heat blue them, for God's sake.
Oh shit. Well, I stand corrected, and I'm never afraid to admit my mistake. That's what I saw from that angle as black polishing was actually blued edges of the bridge. So I stand corrected.
Is that blued, really?
Yeah. That's I can hardly see it, but with the description especially, that's what I understand. It says, to make this creation unique, special attention was paid to the different shades of blue that blend in the piece, with the ice blue two-tone dial. And traditional flame blue is applied on the hands and discreetly and originally on the balance bridge. So,
oh, damn.
That is it. That is it. And that is quote unquote simply and
Look at
oversized.
you guys. Very nice.
Yeah, an oversized balance wheel. Because usually this is the kind of bridge construction that's used for tourbillons, but of course, that's just quote unquote a balance bridge, which essentially is heat blued on those edges.
This is crazy.
It's pretty impressive. Yeah, details to die for, honestly. Oops. And lot 54 has an estimate of 70,000 to 100,000 in Swiss francs. I also like the larger case construction too. I feel it's very, very classical. Nothing too ostentatious or adventurous.
It's beauty. It's beauty.
Great piece.
Watches are so I don't know, like the game of baseball and wristwatches, like they're just romantic to me.
For sure.
I need to step away for a few minutes, but I will be back.
All right.
If you'll have me, if you kick me and block me, I'll understand why.
No way. No way. Take your time. Take your time, please. So we're continuing to look for the interesting lots in the upcoming charity event, the OmniWatch auction, that is going to be held in Geneva on November 5th. And it is held by Christie's. If you have any particular lots in mind, I've posted the link. Feel free to direct our attention to it with the lot number. We were just looking at Sylvain Pinault's origin, one-of-a-kind piece that he produced for this auction. And it had such an interesting play of the different shades of blue. I certainly was altogether stumped. I didn't even I don't think I've ever seen a balance bridge or tourbillon bridge or anything of that sort heat blued on the edges like that. It's really incredible, and I apologize for my initial mistake. Here is, again, a relatively simple concept. Since the upside down is a watch that Ludovic Balloir makes, you might say it is his bread and butter. Ludovic Balloir is a Frenchman who has started his professional life in Frank Muller in the after sales service department, found himself at FP Jean, and he worked for them for about 7 years, I believe. But when he found the chance in 2009 to set off on his own path, he didn't hesitate, and he started his independent journey in May 2009. And the Upside Down was, in fact, his first design. This is an interesting interpretation of the jump hour concept. There's a singular minute hand centrally situated. The hour is indicated by these unique jumping hours, which are reversed, which look down when they are not showing that particular hour, but which flip right over and go right side up when it is that hour. So this is 10:10 basically in the usual tradition of presenting watches. Additionally, for a visual aid, there's also dots that is in the lower right corner of that turning circle for the hour, for the jump hour. Here's a look at the mechanism. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
We were looking at the at lot 40, which is the Ludovic Balloard upside down in a one-of-a-kind blue feather edition done with the guilloche artist Brittany Nicole Cox.
I liked it until I actually saw the upside down, and that just played with my head a little too much.
You don't like that complication?
No.
The guilloche is
I
stunning.
really like it. I really like the guilloche.
Oh, wow. Alireza 6633. I'm about to derail you again for my own nefarious purposes, paying the rent. I don't consider it derailing, but as always, I really appreciate your contribution, Alireza. Do we have to change? Do we have to change this watch immediately?
No. Actually, I do need to get going here, but I wanted to get your opinion on something. As you
Okay.
know, and as I think we've talked about on air, I have a couple watches on order, right? And I'm expecting some, hopefully phone calls. But the Roman Gauthier that will definitely, which by the way, I now have two on order, not the same one, two different Gauthiers, but that's a different conversation for another time. I need a third, like a kind of filler watch, right? And I'm debating between two completely different watches, but they are not completely different, but they all right. I'm debating between the new 75th anniversary Ultra Deep, right? I like what they did with the blue, that summer blue darkening for each depth indicator. I like the Ultra Deep. I like the Easter egg. And of all things, because I actually got a chance to put it on my wrist, the new Yachtmaster in titanium 42 mil. I was surprised I actually liked it. And the only comments I had before is I just thought titanium in the Yachtmaster line was the mistake of where to introduce it, after obviously the deep sea limited edition. So those are the two I'm debating between, as at least at the moment. I could change my mind tomorrow. I'm apt to do that. They're obviously completely different makes, and the Ultra Deep is a much bigger watch. They're both beautiful in their own regard. But I don't think I've ever gotten your... I did hear you talk about the Ultra Deep. You obviously covered the Omega releases, but I don't know that I ever, or I remember what your take on the Yachtmaster 42 and titanium was. So I would like to pay you for your opinion on that as I'm mulling this over, as I respect your opinion both aesthetically and horologically.
Thank you so much. First of all, I think so let's start with the titanium Yachtmaster 42. I think even though I was not necessarily pining for a titanium Rolex watch, and specifically a titanium Submariner or Yachtmaster from Rolex specifically, I thought it actually made a lot of sense, because I think back a decade even where people were expecting basically a Submariner 2.0, you know, a larger Submariner, a Submariner that was perhaps executed in a different kind of metal, possibly titanium. I mean, that was kind of the other sporty metal that was taught. And of course, when you go back a little bit in Rolex's history, that model was introduced in 1992 when Patrick Heinige was taking over from his father as the managing director. And he would later officially become the CEO as well. So the Yachtmaster was kind of his, coronation announcement. And in a way, even though people contest me on this, the professor corrects me on this, but this is just my conjecture. At least at some point initially in its design, it was imagined as Submariner 2.0. So for me to see that arc come to a certain completion in 3 decades with Yachtmaster 42 and not 40 with a full bracelet in titanium, it makes sense. That is the Submariner in so many ways that people have been expecting from Rolex. Because, for us traditionalists, of course, we always have a place to go. We can go to at 5-digit, we can go even further beyond if we have the opportunity or luxury to afford it, so on and so forth. But people who wanted the Rolex aesthetic, but something perhaps a little differently proportioned, did not have it in the catalog. So for me, Yachtmaster is basically a Submariner for the 21st century in that particular iteration. I think it looks like, not only in terms of its design, but in terms of its feel, it looks like a very different watch from even the other Yachtmaster 42s, which are, of course, yellow gold, and before that, the white gold on Oyster Flex. And I treat it as that, right? It's like a Submariner for the new age, whereas the Ultra Deep is a more serious diving instrument. It is, of course, a lot of that is romanticism, but it is a purpose-driven watch, a tool watch with a particular function in mind. So it's thicker, it's larger, but in a way it's also lighter at heart compared to the titanium Yachtmaster, which is a dark watch.
Like aesthetically, it's a different feeling for me. Yeah, no, lighter at heart. That's true. I mean, it just is. It also has an Easter egg in it, a UV Easter egg, right? So it's like really light at heart in that sense.
Yeah, and yeah. So I have to say also, beyond that Easter egg, I also like the fact that they took that gradient blue idea as a whole marketing shtick, and did that notion of having the Aquaterra as the lightest blue and Ultra Deep as the darkest. For me, the sweet spot happens right around Ploprof. I think that's, to me, the most pleasing shade.
I think it is the most pleasing shade, and it's a strategy. It's on a Ploprof,
which is a very much an acquired taste, and also.
And I like the Ploprof, by the way. I'm one of those people, but it's not one I could never wear it. I just like it.
Right. Agnelli, Gianni Agnelli, who is one of the biggest style icons, of course. He wore one as his sports watch on an isofrane strap, famously, and sometimes over the cuff of his shirts, etc. Pop over shirts. Which, I mean, it's an interesting aesthetic. Again, not necessarily mine. Look, I'll put it this way: I love the Sea Dweller 43. If I were built more like you, I would be wearing a Sea Dweller 43 every day, not a Yachtmaster 42. So, thinking like that, to me, the Submariner I like more in compact dimensions. If you're gonna go Yachtmaster, you can go one step further and just take the ultra deep. So I'm not gonna do the predictable thing, not because I'm trying not to do the predictable, but even as a Rolex fanboy, between these two watches, for you, I would probably choose the ultra deep. If I were choosing for me, I would choose the Sea Dweller 43, which is not one of the options. So that's my final answer.
All right, that's fair. And the Sea Dweller is not a watch that interests me, unfortunately. I don't know why. I've never been able to put my finger quite on it. Why the Sea Dweller doesn't interest me.
And James Cameron doesn't either.
No, not at all. I mean, as you know, I'm not like a huge fan of Rolex. Like,
I know.
if my one and done, I've said this multiple times. If I had a one and done, and it's a theoretical watch, it doesn't exist. It would be a modern date 42 platinum diamond baguettes, right? Like, so it's not that I don't see Rolex design cues, for what they are, and I've owned 4 at this point. But as a mark, it doesn't do anything for me. The crown doesn't scream to me, right? I don't need the crown. So all right, that's good feedback. There's a couple of Omegas in this release that appeal to me. But that Yachtmaster, if for me, it would be a no-brainer if the Yachtmaster had no date. If the Yachtmaster had no date, I would go with the Yachtmaster. But the date and the Cyclops aggravate the ever-loving hell out of me.
Yeah, I'm not look, I have some Rolexes. Well, in fact, the great majority of my Rolexes beyond my Submariner have the Cyclops with a date, but I think they would actually be better watches if they just had a domed acrylic bezel, even if they have the dates. So I'm not a big fan of the Cyclops, as it happens. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the answer. I paid my rent. Everybody, please vote. Do not forget. Consider subscribing to YouTube and/or Patreon. I think the Patreon's excellent. Also, if I understand correctly, Patreon takes less of the money as overhead than YouTube does. So that's if you want to help Brando even more, that's a consideration to consider. And I will see you next week sometime. I've got a lot of family coming in, so I don't know if I'm going to do anything other than maybe the Sunday Fun Day, and I might not be able to do that. But I will definitely see you again. I appreciate your time. I like the new chair.
Even though it needs to be greased a little bit. I think
nobody but you heard it. I promise you, nobody but you heard it. So I appreciate
it. Wait, you want to hear this? Corrado Galizia for 99. Thank you. Have a great long weekend, Ali. We will miss you, but we'll look forward to have you when you come back. And
see you guys soon. You have a good night, man.
Thank you.
Corrado, that's fantastic. I can't do that.
I love. I'm pretty sure that's not how you actually pronounce his name, in the sense in the Daily American sense, but that's okay. I enjoy it. It's like to me it looks like an aristocratic name to me, so it needs to be pronounced with a certain.
Oh my God, you're right. I didn't even think about that. You're absolutely right. He feels like a member of parliament or something, right? Like it's up there. That's not quite aristocratic, but definitely along those lines. So, all right, you have a good weekend, buddy.
Take care. Bye. Fry says about the Ultra Deep. Tried the Ultra Deep twice at Omega Geneva. Stunning, but the thickness was a no-go. Ali Reza is a beast, man. So I'm sure the thickness doesn't faze him at all. But it is certainly a consideration for most of us. So we were looking at the Ludovic Balloir upside down, what was it called? Blue Feather, which is a unique and stunning guilloche dial realized by the artist Brittany Nicole Cox, specifically for this one-of-a-kind creation for the only watch. It's hand-guided rose engine that applies this pattern, which looks like so many birds taking flight. I was earlier talking about the start of Balloir's independent career, which was when he left FP Jaune mid-year in 2009, and December 2009 was when he released his Upside Down, which is an interesting take on the jump hour concept with a single minute hand that makes a revolution along the dial, obviously once every 60 minutes. And at that time, the hour jumps from one to the next, which ends up being turned right side up. There is also an additional dot as a visual aid to the current hour at its lower right corner. I like this watch from a technical standpoint. I'm not sure whether the actual appearance of the piece pleases me aesthetically. And, you know, from that perspective, I think my cue is usually the mechanism. I mean, I look at the mechanism, and oftentimes I take more pleasure out of that mechanism than the actual dial layout. So the fact that this particular piece has that unique dial made by this artist, Brittany Nicole Cox, is, I think, very precious. The case is in platinum. The dial is made from a silver blank, decorated with the unique hand guilloche pattern depicting birds in flight. Engine turns by Brittany Nicole Cox, colored in this particular way via ALD. The piece has the in-house caliber B01, which is a patented jump hour mechanism unique to Ludovic Balloir, a power reserve of 36 hours at full manual wind, beating with 3 hertz, 21,600 vibrations per hour. The description is quite beautiful, so I will just share that as well. The original motif, boasting a multitude of carefully placed cuts and facets, was designed and engine turned by Cox, who took inspiration from Emily Dickinson's poem, "Hope is the thing with feathers to create it. While the soaring birds denote optimism, resilience, and perseverance, their blue feathers symbolize looking out for and giving back to others. Only the current hour is displayed right way up, reminding us it is only the present moment that truly matters. This is, by the way, a very short poem, so I will just read it for you. Hope is the thing with feathers. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. I've heard it in the chillest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked the crumb of me. Man. All right, back to watches. That was Emily Dickinson is great. This is Lot 40 with a lyrically inspired dial, a collaboration by the watchmaker Ludovic Ballois, who has his patented mechanism for the jump hour in the upside down, and an artist in guillochage, Brittany Nicole Cox. Upside down blue feather. The estimated value of the piece at lot number 40 is 60,000 to 100 Swiss francs. There's another watch that really inspires me. This is Lot 34, which is Crayon. Crayon is a brand, a watch that has come into attention in the recent years. I think they won with their Anywhere watch, the GPHG Calendar and Astronomy Prize last November. This is a model they call Everywhere, which had previously won in 2018 the Innovation Prize at the same gala, at the same ceremony for Grand Prix d'Horlogerie de Genève. That was, in fact, the company's first creation, and here, for the only watch, as Lot 34, they are presenting the Crayon Anywhere. I'm sorry, I was a little confused about the different names for their models. So this is a version of the Anywhere, not Everywhere. And the particular function of that piece is something very unique, so I will have to take refuge in the description and we'll go from there. Crayon had previously explored the technique of miniature painting, where each color is deposited by hand in tiny cells hollowed out of the metal to create a work of incredible refinement for the 2021 edition of Only Watch. This time, Crayon again keeps the color blue and explores the very intricate and precise technique of pointillism as inspired by Theo von Rysselberg's painting. The artist's perceptiveness with minute brushstrokes, the paint deposited in small, skillful touches, giving almost imperceptible reliefs to this canvas style, the rich palette of multitude shades of blue, the reflection of the sky on the waves, the light caressing their surface, creating contrasts to reveal a myriad sparkles. There's getting to be too much poetry, and I'm losing all my audience, but I think it's all right. It's almost getting close to midnight, so this is the right mood. In a masterfully controlled circular movement, the dial reveals an exceptional creation, honoring age-old techniques by calling on the rare specialists who still hold their secrets today. The technical prowess of the movement and the artistic sensibility of the dial, the watch is born of the vision of designer Rémi Meillat, a founder of Crayon, keeps alive time-honored Swiss traditions while delighting connoisseurs and lovers of refinements that have become only too rare. Unfortunately, they have not been very descriptive with this description. I'm still not entirely clear whether the watch has any particular complication or function that I can't immediately discern. But obviously, the miniaturized painting in the middle that exemplifies the approach, artistic approach called pointillism. I think there is something to be said about that outer ring with the sun set and sunrise, or at least the morning hours and night hours, but I can't quite discern. If any of you in the audience know, please feel free to let me know, because I don't quite understand, though I can very easily tell, obviously, that there is date, a pointer date, and the month indicated in two concentric subsidiary dials at 6 o'clock. And there's some sense that there's a day and night indicator that surrounds the center dial, which is in fact an exceptional miniature painting. The hands are uniquely shaped and beautifully finished. The bridge plates of the movements are made in German silver without the rhodium plating, which is a first for the brand. The polished grade 5 titanium case is also the first for the brand. The piece is presented on a grained calfskin leather strap in blue and the case is matched with a grade 5 titanium tank buckle. Very restrained proportions, 39 millimeters in diameter and 9.5 millimeters in thickness. This is the Crayon Anywhere for the Only Watch 2023 with a unique day and night indicator, month and date in a subsidiary dial, a very elegant piece that also exhibits the art of miniature painting at its center. This is lot 34. The pre-auction estimate is 150,000 to $250,000 in Swiss francs. Once again, we are looking at the Only Watch, which is a charity event, biannual auction with proceeds going to a charity that submits, contributes to research against Duchenne muscular dystrophy. I want to see if there is anything obvious that I'm skipping. Ali said that he doesn't like pendant watches, so we can get to them momentarily. And maybe he won't even hear about it. But I wanted to take a look at lot 61. As you guys know, Voutilainen more recently introduced his CSW, his first quote-unquote true sports watch. CSW stands for, pardon me, cushion-shaped world timer. Of course, with his own in-house movements and a unique case construction that has these triangular screws in its four corners that are replicated front and back. Fully integrated world timer mechanism, easy to use by simply pressing the crown direction to the case band. Oh my God. Horrible translation from French, whatever this was. So the use is basically simplified because the crown that you use for time setting is also a pusher, which in fact, when pressed obviously against the case band, changes the time zone 1 hour at a time. The dial has a unique, vibrant green color, obviously engine turned by hand and made from solid silver. The new cushion-shaped case is actually inspired by the pocket watch, which Kari and Venla Voutilainen, his daughter, had made for the 2019 edition of Only Watch. The quote-unquote standard model of the CSW is actually produced in stainless steel, whereas this particular piece is made in titanium. Just to give you an idea about where the inspiration for this watch came from, at least from within Voutilainen. Here is that 2019 Omni watch by Voutilainen, father and daughter. You can clearly see the same geometric shape, the same triangular screws placed at the four corners of the front, as well as the case back. In this case, you also have a new world timer movement, which presents an evolution from the previous 28 caliber, preserving the same thin profile, with its circular discs. It creates the same volume. Power reserve of the movement is 60 hours. Characteristically, the movement has an oversized balance wheel, a beautifully polished half bridge, set in place by a beautifully polished half bridge. And considering that it beats at 18,000 semi-oscillations per hour, meaning at 2.5 hertz, it must have a delightful view as it expands and contracts, as if it is breathing in and breathing out, as if the mechanism had some measure of life inhabiting it. The dial itself is, as I mentioned, made out of solid silver, hand decorate, engine turned by hand, with the Trivag decoration emanating from under the hand stag, that triple wave, you might say. And you have a unique decoration also for the hour track, so to speak, with 24 sectors specifically divided in a sunburst kind of fashion. The case is 39 by 39 and 12 millimeters in thickness, and uniquely in titanium for the Omni watch, whereas the standard production model is in stainless steel. Uniquely for its cities ring, for Central European, it has a Motier, which is the town in which Voutilainen has his workshop, and Kemi, which I believe is Kari Voutilainen's Finnish hometown. The CSW, by the way, is, I believe, a limited edition in stainless steel. I wanted to make sure how many examples. only 10 watches at any rate, and it's already listed at 198,000 Swiss francs for the standard production model. So you might say lot 61 is very realistically priced and presumably can go for much more. But this is the Voutilainen CSW Omni Watch cushion-shaped world timer by Kari Voutilainen, with an estimated value of 175,000 to 215,000 in Swiss francs. We are heading into the last hour of the live stream, by the way, so please hit the like button and support the live stream. I would really appreciate it if you could. If you want to support the channel in other ways, you already know how, but feel free to use the links that are included in the video description. Lot 53 is Speak Marin. This was an independent brand established by Peter Speak Marin, the British watchmaker, who has later on sold the brand and who nowadays enlightens us as the Naked Watchmaker, where on his website he literally deconstructs, takes apart, sometimes relatively common, in other moments rather complicated and unusual movements, describing it at every turn. So it can be an incredible learning resource for anyone who is interested. The Ripples is Speak Marin's response to the never-ending craze for and hype of integrated bracelets, sports watches. This particular piece has that integrated look in stainless steel case and bracelets, with a vertically brushed bezel, which contrasts, of course, with various mirror polished surfaces. The dial is what they call bleu royal, royal blue, even though I usually associate that with a darker shade of blue. I am seriously taken by the shade of this dial, as is the case with a lot of the time only Speak Marin pieces. There's an off-center seconds sub-dial here between 1 and 2 o'clock. And it has a beautiful caliber that they call SMA03-T20, previously featured in their 20th anniversary watch. Let's read a little bit about this exceptional watch and its exceptional caliber. Hand finished bridges, inner angles, rhodium plated. Those bridges are rhodium plated, and the decoration is Côte de Genève, Genevan stripes or waves. 52 hours of power reserve on this micro rotor movement that beats at 4 hertz. The watch is water resistant up to 50 meters, 5 atmos of depth rating. The Ripples Bleu Royal was actually designed by Stéphane Lacroix. And this particular piece was hand engraved and masterfully executed by Boris Nemitz. The hands are actually Speak Marin's particular version of spade hands. The hour hand is very distinctly heart shaped, and the minute hand is twisted but has some substance to it, unlike some other set of spade hands which have a minute's hand that is very elegant to the point of perhaps being a little dainty. The horizontal ribbing of the dial contrasts beautifully to that sunburst finish of the subsidiary dial for the seconds. And there's finally also at the periphery of the dial a minute track as well. The particular shade of the blue on the dial is achieved by blue physical vapor deposition, PVD, with a galvanic underlayer. The hands are rhodium plated. The indices are hand polished. In this particular watch, they have used the SMA 03 T20, which they usually preserve for their precious metal watches. But in this auction, they placed it in, pardon me, in the stainless steel integrated bracelet watch, the unique Ripples Bleu Royal. The solid case back is engraved by Boris Nemitz, and you can certainly see that beautiful stripes on the bridge plates as well, and a fantastic decoration on the micro rotor too. The specs list the diameter as 40.3 millimeters and the thickness as 9.2 millimeters. This is the pièce unique Speak Marin Ripples Bleu Royal at lot 53. The pre-auction estimate is 35,000 to 65,000 Swiss francs. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this particular design, to be honest, although there's a lot that I appreciate about this watch and about Speak Marin as a brand. It leaves me unmoved, that it's just such a tired genre at this point, Jack. We are talking about a genre that is now more than half a century old, if you can believe it, but that has received disproportionately more entries into that category in the last 5 years compared to the 45 years that have preceded it. So we're all a little exhausted. It's rare for me to be excited by by an integrated bracelet sporty watch. It really happens very rarely because there's just too many of them around, and not many of them bring something new to the table, aesthetically speaking, especially. There are a few more that I certainly want to look at before we finish tonight. So I'm going to take it one at a time. This is Armin Strom at lot 3, gravity equal force for OmniWatch 2023. Gravity equal force is the world's first automatic watch with a constant force transmission. With its off-center transparent green sapphire dial, the one-of-a-kind timepiece offers an extraordinary view of the exquisitely finished manufacture movements, which features superior chronometric performance and exceptional hand finishing, as you can see here. That base plate is one of the most stunning decorations that I've ever seen. And those stripes are very striking as well. Let's read a little bit more about how they describe this watch. The gravity equal force movement is entirely developed and manufactured in-house by Armin Strom. The Ultimate Sapphire is the name of this particular execution, incorporates the promotional colors of the OmniWatch event, a transparent green sapphire dial, a red logo, and blue stitching on the custom strap. The off-center sapphire dial forms a deconstructed rainbow, which shares the dial face attention with Armin Strom's signature tri-bridge design, as you can see. Armin Strom demonstrates an extreme devotion to traditional haute horlogerie with the decorations, including polished bevels, black polishing, polished sinks, perlage, and various grainings. The signature tri-bridge is coated with dark gray ruthenium. The bridges are fixed with mirror polish screws on the back black movement plate, which is hand guillocheted by Kari Voutilainen's atelier, the only part decorated by an outside friend of Armin Strom. So those details that I had noticed initially is actually accomplished by Voutilainen's atelier, which is not a surprise at all. Really fascinating and beautiful watch with exquisite aesthetic details, especially when it comes to its finish, and has a self-winding constant force movement, which is in and of itself quite unique in a 41 millimeter stainless steel case. That is the micro rotor, by the way, and this is the equal force barrel. At lot number 3, Armin-Strom, gravity equal force, the ultimate sapphire, has an estimated value of 15,000 to 30,000 Swiss francs, which seems rather conservative and which I'm sure will be completely shattered at that ceiling once bidding takes off on November 5th. Lot 8 is a watch that focuses on the art of enamel, and signed Barbier Müller, Mosaic 2. It features a 41 millimeter platinum case decorated with a dazzling mosaic of stones and powered by the 1304 movement signed by F.B. Jean. And I'm sure the movement is much more familiar than the watch. And actually, now that I see the description, I've been stumped once again. The dial does use the Chanlevé technique, but it actually inlays hard stones into those plots. So it's not enamel, but in fact a complete stone dial that depicts a lotus flower motif designed by Éric Giroux and entirely made in Les Quadranières de Genève, which is F.B. Jean's dial maker, and which also supplies dials for Vacheron Constantin, including that famous ink blue dial of their sports chic model overseas. So this watch, in so many ways, is like a custom-made F.B. Jean watch in disguise, because it has an F.B. Jean movement, its dial and hinged case back is made at their dial making facilities. The Geneva-based Barbier-Müller family, known worldwide for its collection of primitive arts, initiated the project of a watch celebrating its passion for history, decorative arts, and the excellence of exceptional savoir-faire. The project took shape in a very small committee guided by Stéphane Barbier-Müller and personally supported by his friend F.B. Jean, that relied exclusively on the high-caliber Genevan craftsmanship of the likes of Les Quadranières de Genève, Les Poitiers de Genève, both Jean's own makers for the dial and the case, respectively. The result was an inaugural creation, Mosaic, presented at the Omni Watch 2017. Now the initiative is renewed for this edition, even more complex, again supported by FP Jaune, and given a distinctive visual identity by the Geneva-based designer Eric Giroux. Let's bring up the earlier version, the 2017 mosaic. So we have a reference point for this. Yeah, this is much less intricate than the current piece. Here is the Barbier Müller piece that was sold in the 2017 edition of this charity auction. It had an estimate of 110,000 to 200,000 Swiss francs, and eventually sold for 90,000 Swiss francs in 2017. The 2013 edition, Mosaic 2, which is essentially an FP Jaune watch designed by Eric Giroux and conceived by Barbier Müller. And at lot 8, the estimated value of this watch is 150 to 250,000 Swiss francs. I'm trying not to repeat some of the pieces that I've already covered, but if you wish to look again, I would be more than happy to do a double take on some of these. Lot 23 is a collaboration between Frédéric Constant and Christian van der Klauw. This is a watch they call Tourbillon Planetarium. An astronomical complication which combines the world's smallest planetarium at 12 o'clock, as you can see, with a high-end manufacture tourbillon movements. .42 platinum case with 1338 millimeter in thickness, an aventurine dial, a blue aventurine dial with the planetarium at 12 o'clock, date and month at 9 o'clock, 1 minute tourbillon at 6 o'clock, applied silver diamond cut indices and hand polished silver colored hour, minutes, day, and date hands. The movement is decorated by hand, exhibiting techniques of hammering, chamfering, circular graining, drawing flanks, mirror polishing, and engraved automatic bridge. The piece has a 38 hours power reserve and with a movement that beats at 4 hertz. Unfortunately, we don't really have a nice view of the movement in these renderings, so we will essentially have to take their word for it. The world's smallest planetarium at 12 o'clock shows the 6 planets orbiting the sun in real time, an orbit that takes the Saturn almost 30 years to complete. It's also the first time a Frédéric Constant has sported a combined date-month display using hands on a single counter. That seems a rather odd detail to note here, but we'll let that pass. A beautiful blue aventurine dial, stunning watch, a 1-minute tourbillon as well. This is the Frédéric Constant and ex Christian van der Klauw, Dutch founded and Dutch led watchmakers, even though I believe Frédéric Constant is now owned by Citizen Group. Their contribution to the Only watch at lot number 23 has an estimated value of 90 to 110,000 in Swiss francs. Please hit the like button if you haven't already. It helps a great deal. If you would like to help the channel, you know how, but the options are in the video description. They're also now in the rolling ticker, and the links are provided and pinned in the chat as well. I have introduced memberships with exclusive contents that brings you from the archives some of my market digests that take on a particular complication, a specific brand, or a model of a watch, choosing various examples of value propositions with specific links, which can be, of course, a watch that you're seeking and would like to buy. But even when it isn't, since I go into the historical and horological detail to explain their significance, there's always something to be gained from these videos. As I mentioned, Ali Reza actually very kindly gifted 15 memberships on the day these were introduced. I think there's still a couple of them to go around, so make sure to allow gifts on this channel, and you might be able to get one of the remaining trial memberships for the next month that are still floating around. But if not, you should be able to click the join button if you're on your personal computer or an Android device. I don't think it works on the iPhone, unfortunately. But that is another option to consistently support the channel. This is, as I always emphasize, a pure, completely independent platform, which means I'm entirely at your service. I don't have to serve as a mouthpiece to a specific auction house, to anyone in the industry, a brand or another personal interest. I'm not in the pocket of some gray markets, profiteers, and other people. Of course, I have my friends in the industry whom I like to support, and sometimes I will highlight pieces from them, as I did from Wind Vintage earlier. I do that simply because they are friends and because I trust their judgment, their taste, and their integrity. But I will always underline that. And in the same way, of course, I have my own favorites, my particular prejudices when it comes to brands that I like and that I dislike, complications that excite me, and others that leave me unmoved and unfazed. But anyway, at the end of the day, this is a platform where everyone can speak their mind, and it is an open platform for all enthusiasts. So usually the link is pinned up there, but even when it isn't, you just let me know. I send you the link, and you jump on and speak your mind. We are looking at the Only Watch 2023. At lot 26, we have a Gérard Perregaux Neo Constant Escapement Only Watch edition. This is a piece that employs the brand's highly inventive constant force mechanism. And it is a piece that's trying to bring focus once again to the technical prowess and craftsmanship of the brand. Here's how they describe their constant force mechanism. A problem that afflicts most watches is that when fully wound, the force from the spring barrel, ultimately serving the regulating organ, is excessive. Conversely, as the energy within the barrel diminishes prior to the point of total exhaustion, the regulating organ receives insufficient force that impairs precision. So at either end of that power reserve, when it's fully wound or when it's almost at the point of depletion, most watches without any kind of constant force mechanism lose their precision. If they are chronometers, even when they're chronometers, they're not as accurate, especially as they approach that point of total exhaustion. The constant escapement addresses such problems, providing a uniform supply of force to the regulating organ and by default, an extraordinary rate of stability. The 2023 edition for the Only Watch, Gérard Perregaux has masterminded a pièce unique inspired by its famous Bridges collection, as you can see from the back here and from the front here. The piece has an 18 karat pink gold case, 45 millimeters in diameter, with a sandblasted finish. The movement itself has a number of high horology finishes applied to it. The conventional dial is nowhere to be seen. There is an open worked construction that exhibits a number of functional parts on the face of the watch. These include the twin barrels, the unique silicium blade, which buckles back and forth, serving as a regulating organ with a uniform pulse of force. It's really beautiful. The movement beats at 3 hertz and has a power reserve of minimum 7 days. a week-long movement at the chronometric rates. And the watch shows hours and minutes and has also a power reserve indicator. As you can see here at around 9 o'clock. A beautiful design, really. Again, the 2 barrels for the week-long power reserve indicator, and the silicium blade that serves as the regulating organ with a uniform pulse force. This is lot 26 for the Girard-Perregaux Neo Constant Escapement for OmniWatch 2023. The piece has a pre-auction estimate of 140,000 to 220,000 in Swiss francs. Lot 32 is the Rolling Stone Automaton by Jacques Dreux. Jacques Dreux, as you guys know, has been practically dedicated to the making of automata or automaton watches at this point within Swatch Group. So this is an interesting way to highlight their capabilities. It's literally Rolling Stone, a piece, an automaton dedicated to Rolling Stones, the band. And it has an animation under the dial for hour and minutes that recalls apparently children's night lights and spinning tops with colors and rotating discs showcasing the band's gear, all handcrafted, very multi-dimensional and fascinating piece as a mechanism to begin with, and also in terms of the detail it brings to that automaton. This is a look at the movement. This is a close look at the dial. The rainbow, the watches are very colorful this year, and the rainbow is very prominent. And that kind of takes after the theme colors of this year, which you can see, of course, everywhere. The Rolling Stones Stones' instruments, handcrafted from blocks of gold, sit beneath the offset hours and minutes display on a disc colored to resemble a vinyl LP. The scene is surrounded by a second disc that rotates when the pusher is activated, while the iconic stone's tongue rises, falls, and moves from left to right. Very interesting. The power reserve is shown at 9 o'clock by a cam made to look like the tone arm and stylus of a traditional record turntable right here. This is the tongue that can be animated. Furthermore, as it rotates, the brightly colored spiral creates an optical illusion, just like a child's spinning top, with each color hand painted to match the OmniWatch 2023 palette. A second Rolling Stones tongue at the center glows in the dark, recalling a child's bedroom nightlights. This is the luminous one, and this is the moving one when it comes to the Rolling Stones tongues. It's actually quite fascinating because the thickness, even in this kind of elaborate case, is right under 17 millimeters. And we have a 18 karat white gold case, 43 millimeters in diameter, 68 hours of power reserve for the timekeeping functions of the watch, and 4 minutes for the automaton itself, the animation. Fascinating and fun piece, even though it's certainly not for me, by Jacques Trou, lot 33, with an estimate of 250 to 300,000 Swiss francs. Hey, Nick Butter, how are you doing, man? $10. Love the rose gold on lot 26. My eyes is set on lot 34. The crayon. I always love the minimal design of classic timepieces. I'm happy to discuss it again. I did it right before you came. I think both of these lots, but let me see what I can do for you. I always appreciate you, of course. 26 we just discussed. It was the GP Neo constant escapement, and the crayon maybe right before you came. Crayon having won with their first creation an innovation prize at GPHG in 2018 with the Everywhere. They have won in 2022 the calendar and astronomical price with Anywhere. And this particular piece is an example of Anywhere. Let me see if I can dig further information about the piece. that outer dial, which serves as the AM PM, which is to say day and night, actually more properly a day and night indication, is custom designed, if I'm not mistaken, which makes this watch very personal. The watch displays ephemeris, more precisely the time of sunrise and sunset at any point on the globe chosen by its wearer. It can be the wearer's location at that precise moment, the place of birth, the location where loved ones wait, the place where dreams are made or remembered. It can be anywhere. So, in fact, this particular version of crayons anywhere, which we find at lot 34 of OmniWatch, presented in a unique grade 5 titanium case, 39 millimeters in diameter and 9.5 millimeters thick. The piece doesn't only have a miniature painting at the center dial, which exhibits an example of pointillism as an approach to art, inspired by Theo van Rysselberghe. It also has, as mentioned, a unique and customizable way of day-night indication of sunrise and sunset times that are laid out along the periphery of that center dial. I really like it aesthetically as well. I think, to be honest, Nick, I believe, I haven't seen this watch in action, but I believe the sun moves along the periphery of the center dial. But in either case, I know for a fact that they can customize and arrange, at least for their usual models, the distinctions between day and night. So minimally, it would serve as a rough estimate of sunrise and sundown, depending on where you are on this earth. And at 6, of course, it has a pointer date in a subsidiary dial, as well as the month. But yeah, beautiful, beautiful piece. I think the Crayon Anywhere is not a cheap watch by any means, don't take me wrong, but oh, I take it back. It's actually $130,000. So it's quite the hefty price tag, anyways, with the regular production model, which is quite rare, of course, and exclusive. But lot 34 has a pre-auction estimate of 150,000 to 250,000 in Swiss francs. The movement is beautifully decorated too, as you can see. Made out of German silver, that peculiar alloy of nickel, copper, and zinc. In this case, they have not plated it with rhodium as they usually do, so it preserves its champagne-like hue that you might be familiar from the exhibited bridge plates of, let's say, Langa 1. Very, very beautiful indeed. Maybe we'll look for about 2 more watches. What do we have? We will look at the 36 Louis Vuitton. Maybe the Laurent Ferrier. I don't know. But probably the Peterman Beda. We might look at 1 or 2 odd pieces tomorrow night. But before that, I want to finish strong. I think I will do Louis Vuitton and then end with Peterman Beda. Of course, these kinds of watches by Louis Vuitton, the Automata, which have actually won prizes previously at GPHG, also with the Carpe Diem, for example. I just want to make sure that is the case and that I'm not confused. Yeah, the Carpe Diem actually won the Audacity Prize in 2021. These kinds of automata watches and very special creations by Louis Vuitton actually are made in La Fabrique du Temps, which is the centerpiece of their watch manufacturing today, and is traditionally the complications and high horology workshop led by master watchmakers Michel Navas and Enrico Barbazini, the two masterminds behind the Daniel Roth and Jarajanta revival this year. As I mentioned before, this is the 10th occasion of the Omni watch, and Louis Vuitton wished to celebrate this with an automaton that has Einstein's head. Let's see what it can do for them. And this celebrates the push towards a better future. Designed and developed and manufactured at LV's watchmaking workshop, the Tambour Einstein automata is the result of some of the most recognized horological and artisanal talents in the world today, a dial of remarkable craftsmanship incorporating the techniques of microsculpture. Christie enamel depicts the likeness of Albert Einstein in one of his most notorious photographic and mischievous portraits, sticking his tongue out in an unexpected moment of levity. Within the iconic tambour case beats the LV 525 caliber, whose movement brings the dial to life through 4 animations, providing time on demand. The story of the dial continues on a hand-painted Louis Vuitton trunk, giving pride of place to this exceptional watch. There's an engraved steel hair strand extending from the dial, as you can see here. The face is itself executed as a real work of art in a mix of gold engraving and Christie enamel. and I believe you can actually see the time on demand in this watch. Let me see actually quickly if I can see the carpe diem, because I believe movement actually is the same. Yeah, sorry about that. The movement is exactly the same. So if I find you a view of how that works. I think you basically end up pulling Einstein's hair, because, or pressing on it rather. This is the pusher, because this is how the Carpe Diem watch works, for example. Right here. So when you press that pusher at around 2 o'clock, things start moving and exposes the automata on the watch start moving and basically expose the time with along with an animation. In this case, you have a case that is in the traditional shape of tambour in stainless steel, 46.8 millimeters and only 14.4 millimeters in thickness, which is very impressive for this sort of dial that has 4 different automata. The dial itself has 18 carats white gold engravings by Dick Steenman, who also engraves that extra piece of hair that goes beyond the dial. The enamel dial, using miniature and Christie handmade techniques, is applied by Nicolas Dublé. I believe that's how you read his name. And this particular piece at lot 39, which is a Louis Vuitton Tambour Einstein automata, has a pre-auction estimates that ranges from 340,000 to 440,000 Swiss francs. Thank you, Basil. Thank you for reminding everyone to upvote. I appreciate you. Thank you, everybody. All right. The last stretch. If you have any requests, if you want me to pull up anything for you, feel free to submit it right there. Frankly, we will go to this chronomètre d'observatoire for Peter Mambeda at some other point because that's also merely a sketch. So let's pull up something to help us go out strong, something that is a little more substantive. I think I want to take a look at the Beauvais 1822 Orbis Mundi. The Beauvais Orbis Mundi is a world timer which has Beauvais's by now recognizable aesthetic of kind of conversion piece that can be worn both as a wristwatch or carried as a pocket watch, and even worn as a pendant, I believe. Executed in 18 karat pink gold in a 42 millimeter case. Hand-wound movements with a magenta guilloche dial and an easy-to-read world time display. Monaco is in magenta, as is the X digit for the 10th edition of OmniWatch. The foundation behind OmniWatch is a Monegasque foundation, and this is the 10th edition of OmniWatch. So those magenta details that match the guilloche portion of the dial commemorate that. You have the dial for the hour and minutes as well as the world time indication bolted on to the guilloche dial with two heat-blued screws, and the spade handset with that elegantly twisted minute hand is also heat-blued with a triple hand for seconds under 6 o'clock, which indicates seconds on a scale of 20 times 3, of course. At around 4 o'clock, watchmakers 4, you also have a power reserve indicator in this lovely half moon / crescent like cutouts. Similar to what we have seen in the Voutilainen CSW, we have a world timer that is set and used simply by or through its crown. The case has a relatively slim profile at 11.25 millimeters. 7 layers of vibrant magenta lacquer on that guilloche dial. The world time dial, as we mentioned, has those magenta accents for Monaco and Geneva. Monaco and the Roman numeral 410. The X is marked in magenta. You can, of course, glimpse onto the hand-wound movement from the case back with its kind of violet colored tempered screws. Beautiful world time watch in the unique styling of Beauvais Fleurier 1822. a very feminine but strikingly elegant piece that looks at once very time-honored, but also contemporary and even futuristic in its own way. This is the Orbis Mundi by Beauvais at lot 13 with an estimated value of 52,000 to 65,000 Swiss francs. Do I think it would be too small for a pocket watch? Yes and no. I mean, I wouldn't buy a Beauvais of this sort to carry as a pocket watch. Because in our time and day, especially in our time and day, the weight of pocket watches, and I'm talking about both the substantive material weight, but also its emotional weight, is very much about their size, about their heft, and about the kind of substance they even bring into the room in a way when you take it out. So if you're gonna get a pocket watch to be a pocket watch, I would say get something 44 millimeters and ideally even larger, and preferably in precious metal. And if it has some, guilloche decoration on the case or maybe some enamel work, even better. But you want something that is substantive, right? So start with something relatively large size. It can be in stainless steel too. It doesn't have to be all that elaborately decorated. I was just trying to outline a scenario where it's just something out of this world that captivates people the minute you pull out of your pocket. But this is obviously a watch that is made to be worn on the wrist, but also alternatively carried in the pocket and even worn across the neck as a pendant. So it's more of a multi-purpose thing than that. Of course, Beauvais has larger pieces, 44, and I believe even sometimes larger. So there are Beauvais watches for that. This one maybe too small, but it's also feminine, so it can be a great pendant watch for a woman. That's for sure. All right, this brings us to the close of tonight's proceedings. Um, Thank you again for your support. I really appreciate you. Um, Thank you for all the questions, interventions, and um, contributions from the chat. Thank you especially to the super chats of the day by Jack, Jake Brooks, I Love Maldives, a very, very generous one by Ali Reza, indeed, and also by Corrado Galizia, and last but not least, by Nick Butter. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys. Trust me, these super chats mean a lot. As I mentioned, in an untired and untiring fashion, um, everything in terms of the quality and quantity of the content on this channel depends on these contributions, because there are no other resources that I can use to build this channel further. I really want to devote more time into it. I really want to produce more edited videos for it, but I'm already contributing as much as I can while holding also a full-time job. So it takes a toll. Any contributions allow me to devote more time onto the channel and certainly go into the equipment. Nick would be very happy to hear that I'm now sitting. This is not a test. I am actually sitting. It's not from the archives. And I am slowly trying to make this into a little studio in this corner. So hopefully, piece by piece, I'll be able to start decorating the backgrounds and maybe invest some lighting, um, stands, and hopefully another camera. But we are going piece by piece. So again, channel memberships are available. I think there's still about 2 free ones floating around, thanks to Ali Reza's generosity. Make sure you allow um, gifts on the channel. This will give you access to exclusive contents at the initiate level, which comes from the archive of digests that I have been producing for my Patreon supporters for months now. These will be gradually made available for the members at $4.99 level per month. The $24.99, if that's your preference, gets you the same daily access to this current digest that provides deals with an exclusive recording that explains those value propositions and delves into historical and horological detail about these watches and serves them into your mailbox. Of course, Patreon is better for that because it actually takes less of a cut. But if you prefer to run the membership through YouTube rather than Patreon, feel free. That higher level gives you actually real-time access, concurrent access to everything I provide on Patreon on a daily basis. That being said, feel free to make any other contributions through Super Chats, through Super Thanks, or PayPal and Cash App. It genuinely helps. I couldn't have been here with you if it weren't for those contributions, and they are essential for me to run these live streams on a regular basis. So keep it coming. I really appreciate you. If nothing else, please hit the like button always in advance whenever you can, and always share the content, especially in the form of interviews and shorter form pieces that I keep doing and uploading to the channel. The latest one was an interview with none other than Periscope at periscope.com about the origins of the dive watch. So check it out if you haven't listened to it yourself, and share it. It's right around 80 minutes, 75, 80 minutes of our conversation based on his beautiful article that he published on periscope.com. Feel free to check it out. And these kinds of interviews, of which I have a whole archive on the channel now, are the best kind of content to share. And anyone you can bring onto the platform in this way brings so much more into the community for all of us. So please do that if you can. I constantly post these kinds of things as stories on my Instagram, for example, at Young Brando, as you can see there. I'll send a link. So feel free to put them in your stories, share them on other social media platforms. It certainly helps immensely, and help me reach at least 2,500, 2.5K subscribers by the end of the year, and I'll be happy. Anything more is even better. So I really appreciate you once again. I'm signing off for tonight. Please keep them coming, keep your support coming. If you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to write to me at the email indicated below. You can also reach me on Instagram. And if you are a member of this channel, or if you are one of my Patreon supporters, of course, you get almost instant response. They will tell you, and by they, I mean Avo, I mean Gandog, I mean Alireza, I mean Jake Brooks, I mean Bezos, and I mean, of course, Corrado Galizia, my big six. I look forward to being with you again tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, wait a second. All right. I love Maldives. If you are still there, send me a line in the chat. I'll stay live and discuss what you mentioned there. If not, on Saturday, um, which is tomorrow, or which is today, in fact, on the next show, I will discuss it for you. Just let me know when you drop in the chat, and I will get back to you on this. This is actually something I've been thinking about throughout the day. I read that post by Horology Ancienne, and I was taken aback by it, honestly. So if you're still there, I'm giving it 2 more minutes. Let me grab a cup of water. If you're back by then, I will talk about it right now. If not, tomorrow, you just let me know when you are here in the chat, and we will discuss it then. Okay. I'm guessing he may have left in frustration. My apologies. I heart Maldives. I'll be back tomorrow. And at any rate, like you asked, it's an issue that has many sides, many different moving pieces. And I have a certain opinion about it, but I'm not immovable when it comes to it. I know the issue is much more complex than taking simply one side. The question, by the way, I'm sorry I'm being cryptic because I don't want to spoil everything by just giving you a one-sentence description. But an important collector on Instagram posted this long write-up about the pricing practices of certain independent watchmakers on Instagram. And he was basically implying that pricing at the point of retail has become outrageous and exorbitant, and that pricing, the retail price for independent makers and even established manufacturers should never be decided by market value. That was the argument of that collector. And that's what we are going to discuss tomorrow. We can also go back and pull up some of the watches from the Only Watch. Some I missed and didn't discuss. Others that perhaps merit a second look. We'll be back. But until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and enjoy your watches. I look forward to seeing you next time.